They expected data logs, schematics, weapon coordinates. What they got was a whisper that killed the room. The debrief chamber on Terran base Deltaris 4 was silent, save for the hum of the playback unit. Aelry sat cross-legged on the projection screen, silver skin glowing faintly under the scan lights. No datapad, no speech, just her eyes, too calm for someone who'd just survived the collapse of a frontier colony. "I didn't take notes," she said. "I remember everything." Admiral Kovic rolled his eyes and pressed his knuckles into his jaw. Another defector trying to mystify intelligence with riddles. But then she said it, calm, brutal, unblinking. "I watched your gods bleed." No one moved. The recording continued. Aelry blinked once. "You called it Vega Prime. We called it Sanctuary 5. We were wrong both times." Kovic reached to pause. A junior officer grabbed his wrist. "Sir, keep watching." In the next breath, Aelry described classified fleet movements. Terran losses in sectors still marked unknown. She referenced names, people who hadn't even been assigned yet. Her calm voice made it worse, like she was describing memories from tomorrow. Kovic's hand trembled. She ended with this: "One of you, here, has already brought it through." The playback stopped. Officers looked at each other. Cold sweat. Someone whispered, "What the hell did she mean?" Kovic stood, eyes locked on the blank screen. "Get her back in. Now." But she was already gone. 6 weeks earlier, Aelry had arrived, silent, shivering, half-conscious, on board the Terran vessel Lysithea. Her escape pod had drifted from the Ikar side of the Passaian conflict. Her DNA read non-human, Ikar, but not exactly. Something subtler, stranger. They kept her quarantined in Observation Deck 7. She didn't eat, didn't blink much, just sat near the metallic walls and traced spiral patterns with one finger. Lieutenant Reese Harker, an ex-cartographer turned security analyst, noticed something odd. The spirals weren't random. They matched topological distortions from previous annihilated colonies, places Terran Command had lost in mere minutes. And they weren't just shapes. They were maps, but not of terrain, of space-time folds. Harker tried showing her a projection of Earth. She didn't react. Then he pulled up a Terran prayer. She turned slowly. Her first words, "They don't listen anymore." The higher-ups laughed it off. "Another traumatized alien refugee," they said. But the longer she stayed silent, the more she seemed to know. The way she looked at security cams before they rotated, the way she winced seconds before hypercoms glitched. She wasn't reacting. She was predicting. Terran High Command labeled her a Category 5 Enigma asset. They thought she was Ikar, until she corrected them. "Ikar imitates survival," she murmured. "I imitate memory." They scanned her again. Genomic sequences, unreadable, half-recursive. Her mind, partitioned, quantum-locked. They brought in Dr. Olani Vess, a linguist specializing in ancient subroutines of extinct alien languages. Aelry responded to none of the known Ikar dialects. But when Vess played an old recording, a forgotten Terran lullaby, The Dying Comet, Aelry began to cry. "You don't know what you brought back," she said. Vess leaned in. "Brought back from where?" "From under the fold, where they buried what never lived." Her words made no sense. until Polaris 9 went dark. It was a silent outpost, designed to listen across star-choked voids for enemy broadcasts. Its last transmission was simple, static, then an image. A humanoid figure walking through vacuum, eyes glowing red, skin iridescent. Harker replayed it frame by frame. Aelry saw it once and whispered, "You brought it through." Terran Brass scrambled. Polaris 9 had no weapons, no survivors, no entry logs, only a figure, and the resemblance to Aelry was impossible to dismiss. The council reconvened in panic. They demanded answers. "What did you mean? Brought it through?" Aelry was taken to the vault room, an interrogation chamber laced with neurosuppressants. But she didn't falter. "You remember the invention, not the consequence." She described the Project E9 breach, an unauthorized experiment in time-fold compression near a binary neutron star years ago. They thought it failed. She said otherwise. When you bent time, it cracked open probability, and they noticed. "Who are they?" Harker asked. Aelry looked upward, not at the ceiling, but beyond. "The Thresh. They do not exist in one reality. They sift through collapsed ones, looking for echoes of power. For you, they are myth. For me, they were home." Silence gripped the room. Then she added, "They devoured my kind, left me as the echo. But the breach let one through again. You call it Polaris." A low alarm sounded. Polaris 8, now unresponsive. 2 systems lost. No traces, no attacks. Just deletion. Kovic turned pale. "She's not here to warn us. She's the fuse." "No," said Harker softly. "She's the last firewall." A classified sublayer of Terran Command, codenamed the Pale Arc, had long denied the existence of Protocol E9 breaches, but Project Vortex had happened, and the Thresh were the result. Aelry sat surrounded by intelligence officers who now viewed her as both threat and oracle. "When you reached beyond your epoch," she said, "you rang a bell in the silence. They thought the Vortex experiment had merely folded local spacetime for faster-than-light communication. But Aelry explained it differently. You didn't fold time," she said. "You scraped it, and the flakes of forgotten realities attached themselves to you." Kovic barked. "Why now? Why here?" Aelry tilted her head. "Because someone here used it again." The room froze. She wasn't speaking figuratively. A member of the command circle had authorized a second vortex pulse, illegally, and the consequences had already started. Polaris 8 hadn't been attacked. It had been overwritten, swapped with its own non-existence. Dr. Vess, who had been analyzing Aelry's sketches, pulled up one of her original spirals. They aren't just spatial distortions. They're memory decay patterns, fractal traces of events that never happened, but left residue. Kovic snapped. "Why didn't we detect this?" Aelry whispered, "You don't study ghosts in the mirror. You become them." At that moment, a red emergency pulse hit the chamber wall. Outpost Delvan. 3 just disappeared from all logs. No explosion, no signal, just absence. Kovic looked up. Find who activated the second vortex. But Aelry was already walking toward the flame chamber. "Too late," she said. The memory has reached the fire line. They followed Elri into a sealed chamber, once used for experimental psionics. In its center sat a large bowl of black glass crystal, surrounded by 6 triangular stones, older than Earth's written history. "This is where your ancestors screamed," she said. The ritual began with no fire. She placed her palm over the black glass. It ignited, not with flame, but with memory. Images rose like steam, a child's hand reaching through vacuum, a shattered Dyson ring swallowing its stars, human cruisers bending mid-flight as time turned against their armor. All real, all impossible. But then came the most disturbing image. A man, Admiral Kovic, stabbing a woman in the chest on Earth's capital deck. The woman was Vess. Harker turned toward Kovic, eyes wide. "Sir." Kovic stared in horror. "I would never." Elri closed her hand, extinguishing the memory fire. "It hasn't happened yet." The room erupted in chaos, but Vess, stunned pale, whispered, "Is this a warning or a decision?" Elri responded, "Both, but not mine." Vess asked her, "What are you really?" Elri replied softly, "A collector of undone truths, and one is hiding in this room." At that moment, Harker noticed something. The camera system blinked. Out of sync. One person in the room wasn't blinking at all. Not even once. They turned toward the communications officer, Lieutenant Marin, and saw him smile, half a second too early. "Seize him," shouted Kovic. But Marin, or what wore his face, smiled wider, skin beginning to ripple, form struggling to contain itself. "I am not him," it rasped. "I am what you whispered into your weapons. I am your echo." The thing moved with impossible speed, throwing agents aside like dust. It wasn't corporeal. It shimmered, refracted, slipped through solid steel. It wasn't just faster. It moved like it had already been here. Elri stepped between it and the others. "You should not be. You are not yet. You fear the future you wrote," it hissed. "I remember the fire," she said. Then she pulled something from her skin, a shot of white gold light, shaped like an eye. "The probabilist key," Vess whispered. The entity halted. Elri looked over her shoulder. "This is the only thing that locks a future back into its timeline. You must choose." "Choose what?" Vess asked. "To forget or to burn?" The entity snarled. "You are alone." But behind Elri, the air shimmered, and 2 more figures stepped forward. Identical, her, but not her, each glowing. She'd been one mind in many vessels, a distributed consciousness hiding in linear time. Harker whispered, "She didn't come for help. She came for containment." Kovic realized, she's a living firewall. The key pulsed, and time cracked. The air fractured like a cracked lens. 3 Eldris stood in unison, identical, but vibrating slightly out of phase with one another. Not clones, not holograms. They were possibilities, manifest, woven back together. The entity snarled, backing into the wall like a wounded animal. "You don't understand what you're keeping out," it hissed. One Elri stepped forward. "You think we're keeping you out." Another answered, "You're just the mouthpiece." The third finished. "The Thresh are listening." Vess moved toward Harker. "The Thresh, they're using us. using our own experiments to walk in. Ellery nodded, her eyes glowing white. When you broke the fold, you didn't just open a door, you invited their curiosity. And this was their first question mark. She looked at the flickering entity that once was Lieutenant Marin. You are the test ping. Suddenly, alarms across the base sounded. Not an attack, a reply signal. From 6 different points in time, all in Earth's past. Dr. Vess whispered, "It's not a war, it's an overwrite." Harker slammed his fist into the wall console. "Then we fight now, not tomorrow, not after the briefings. Now." Kovic looked from the entity to Ellery. "What do we do?" Ellery placed the glowing key onto the center floor tile. "You remember the fire," she said, "but not why you lit it." She twisted the key. The world inverted. It was not a detonation. It was an unwriting. For a fraction of a second, every sentient being on Deltaris 4 remembered being someone else. A version of themselves that died, killed, loved differently, or never existed at all. Memories bled through. Kovic dropped to his knees, crying as he watched himself push Vess into a chamber and lock it. He had seen himself murder her. Not now, not yet, but in another timeline, one still echoing. Dr. Vess blinked and whispered, I don't think this reality is anchored." The entity shrieked, not in pain, but in confusion. It no longer knew what version of itself it was. "What did you do?" it cried. Ellery's voices overlapped. We collapsed the echo chamber. Harker looked around. Half the crew was unconscious. The stars outside the base windows were different. "We're not in our timeline anymore, are we?" Ellery replied, "You are close, but safer, for now." The Marin entity flickered, then vanished. Not destroyed, just unhooked from probability. Ellery, breathless now, fell to one knee. "I must fragment again. My cycles nearly burned." Kovic reached for her. "Wait, we need you." But she looked up, glowing faintly, and said, "You won't remember this tomorrow. That's how it survives, through forgetting." And just like that, she scattered into light. 3 days later, Command reviewed the debrief. Only fragments remained. There was no record of the battle, no record of Project Vortex. Marin's personnel file listed him as never having existed. Polaris 9 was still gone, but its coordinates were now empty, as if the system never formed stars. But one item remained, Ellery's final debrief file. Just her sitting in silence, until she spoke, "You remember the wrong things." That was all. Kovic resigned. Dr. Vess disappeared from public records. Harker transferred to a Black Ops science vessel near the Oort Edge. None of them could recall why they felt different. Yet, some things changed. Earth's new ships began using memory-redundant AI, capable of forgetting selectively. A weaponized uncertainty. Whispers of a fleet, Echo Division, formed without public knowledge, composed of those who survived something undefined. And in the far reaches of dead space, an ancient device blinked to life, a repeating signal, just numbers. 31415. Ellery's voice echoed softly from the dark. "The real invasion begins when you ask the wrong question." Then silence. And yet, in the void, something listened, watching, waiting.